Welcome to Mock Draft Monday. The 2024 NFL Draft is coming up soon, and that means it's time to project what will happen in the draft. It's actually time to live up to that mock draft part. In today's episode, I made my second mock draft and picked where I think every first-round prospect will land. I'm Chase Keller, and welcome to pre-Super Bowl 2024 NFL Mock Draft. Enjoy. Beginning with the Chicago Bears at number 1 overall, I'm going to stick with my belief that they avoid the quarterback position and trade down with one of the two teams below them. QB goes 1 and 2, and the Bears get MHJ at 3, so New England's that team. The first of 5 mock trades in this draft, New England receives first overall, and the Bears get a huge haul back. They get 3rd overall, a 2025 second round pick, and edge rusher Matthew Judon. So when it comes to New England selecting in this slot, they really have the top 2 quarterbacks as options here. New culture in town, no more Bill Belichick, and I think a new quarterback will set the tone in Foxborough. Give me USC quarterback Caleb Williams at pick 1. Washington then comes in at pick 2. I've had the same belief since they got locked in at 2nd overall. They're going to take whichever top 2 quarterback that New England doesn't take, or even if Chicago takes a quarterback, they're just going to take that other guy. It's a perfect spot for them to be. So in that case, that second quarterback is North Carolina's Drake May, who they snag at pick 2. Not much to say with Chicago at pick 3. I said a minute ago that the selection was Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver out of Ohio State. That puts Arizona in an interesting slot. I'm on the mindset that they either get Marvin Harrison Jr. or they could trade down. And with MHJ gone, that's where they go. So who is it with? Could be the Giants, could be the Vikings, could be the Raiders. But I'm taking the Atlanta Falcons. This mock sends picks 4 and 187 to Atlanta, while Arizona receives picks 8, 72, and a 2025 third round selection. Desmond Ridder is not going to pan out well, so quarterback is likely the way to go here. I don't agree that Jaden Daniels is QB3 in this class, but this is a mock draft, predicting what I think will happen. So it's the LSU signal caller at number 4. I've seen some interesting mocks for the LA Chargers, and I am a little torn on this selection. They do go the wide receiver route with Keenan Allen being 31, Mike Williams being 29 and hurt too often, and Johnston not having an appealing first season in the NFL. With that being said, there's only 2 guys I can really go with here, Neighbors or Odunze. I'm taking LSU wideout Malik Neighbors here, and while I do think Odunze is a big reminder of Keenan Allen, Neighbors is the projected second wideout off the board. So then we get to the Giants at pick 6, who go with Odunze instead. There's a possibility for quarterback, offensive tackle, edge rusher, but with Daniels off the board, they're likely going to search for a quarterback answer outside of the draft. Surround that quarterback with an actual wide receiver 1 for once and take Odunze here. So 3 quarterbacks and 3 wide receivers off the board in the first 6 selections. Tennessee kind of needs wide receiver, but they won't continue that trend here. They should focus on bolstering their offensive line in this draft, and that starts with the 2 best offensive tackles here in Joe Alt and Olu Fashanu. I made a whole video on comparing the 2, so check that out after this video. Anywho, they're going to go with the more consistent pass protector to ensure that new guy in Levis doesn't hit the ground too often. Move Petit Frere to right tackle and draft Joe Alt to develop him as your new franchise blindside blocker. Then Arizona's backup. They don't really have a wide receiver option available worth that 8th overall. They don't need running back or tight end, so they avoid the offensive side of the ball and try to improve the mediocre defense. There's 2 guys I have in mind this year, but I'm going with the bigger overall need and taking Alabama's Kool-Aid McKinstry at pick 8. They did take 2 corners in the last draft, but if Garrett Williams can stay healthy, him and Kool-Aid can complement each other extremely well with their similar play styles. I do think Nate Wiggins is also a great pick here. Chicago is now up with their 2nd pick, and with them not going quarterback with their first selection, there's no reason to take one now. They should get over to the defensive end of the ball and try to capitalize on the promise that they showed at the end of the 2023 season. There are a couple of options here, but one really sticks out to me. Alabama edge rusher Dallas Turner is the 9th overall pick in my mock draft. This pick might be a little controversial, but with Aaron Rodgers coming back, you might want to surround him with the new pass catcher. You could go offensive line, especially given Rodgers' injury last year, but with the amount of free agent blockers, you can probably address that before the draft. For that reason, the potential generational tight end in Brock Bowers out of Georgia is pick number 10. Another controversial thing here with Minnesota at pick 11. I don't think they stay here unless they take interior D lineman Jerzon Newton out of Illinois. But let's get a little fun. San Francisco doesn't need a lot of picks, so why don't we have them trade up all the way to 11? San Fran sends 31 and 63 to Minnesota for the 11th overall pick and a 2025 5th round pick. With the switch, what does San Francisco need? They're pretty much packed everywhere, but they absolutely need to bolster the offensive line. With Penn State's Olu Fashanu still on the board, they get the perfect opportunity and take him with the 11th overall pick. Then there's Denver at pick 12, who all but confirmed they're going elsewhere at the quarterback position, which sucks because I admittedly have a Russell Wilson Broncos jersey. Anyways, I have a strong belief about my next quarterback off the board, enough where I have a couple bold predictions about him. Stay tuned for that when my quarterback rankings come out next month. But Washington signal caller Michael Penix Jr. seems about right for Denver, and they snag him at pick 12. Denver's division rivals in Las Vegas creep up to 13th, and they also need a quarterback. But at this point, they would either need JJ McCarthy or Bo Nix, and I don't think either of them will become QB5 this early in the draft. I do think Vegas goes quarterback in the offseason for this exact reason, and they'll probably think about that before the draft. But they go elsewhere in this draft and address the defensive line issues that they've had for years. Instead of going forward with Jerry Tillery and Byron Young, why not add Illinois defensive tackle Jerzon Newton to that struggling interior D-line group? New Orleans is another under-the-radar quarterback team, but I would say that's only because of how great this quarterback class is. I do also think there are bigger needs with this team, including defensive line and offensive tackle. Bolstering up that O-line could be huge to contend with the NFC South next year, and given how bad it was in 2023, 2024 could be a new birth. Bring in the potentially versatile J.C. Latham out of Alabama with the 14th overall selection. When I was picking for the Indianapolis Colts at 15, the position was very obvious to me. The question was, which player would it be? When it came down to selecting a cornerback in order to add another starting talent into the secondary, it all came down to scheme and play style. Cooper DeJean wouldn't particularly fit the Colts secondary. Quinyon Mitchell was a reach and he also doesn't particularly fit, and Kalen King is a great fit, but he feels like a reach. So it comes down to Nate Wiggins and Terrion Arnold. I decided to go with the more physical cornerback in Clemson's Wiggins to fill in pick 15. The Seahawks are a big trade down candidate in my eyes, but they are also yet another underdog quarterback team. I really only like the trade down idea if it's to grab a defensive tackle where one, it's not a reach, but after reviewing mock drafts from other analysts, I'm thinking it might not actually be a reach to take one here. For that reason, I'm mocking Miami defensive tackle Leonard Taylor III to Seattle at pick 16. 16 down, 16 to go. Why don't we open the second half of this mock draft with my 4th mock trade in the first round? Jacksonville sends the 17th overall pick to the Philadelphia Eagles for 22 and 137. Philadelphia trades up with a brand new offensive and defensive coordinator coming into town. So they have a lot of options here, but they trade up primarily to grab one of the hottest topics in the draft for one of their biggest needs. Iowa cornerback Cooper DeJean is my 17th overall pick in this mock. The Cincinnati Bengals will not trade down in this situation as they look to take the Saints route and bolster up their not-so-good offensive line. Here's the issue. They have a bigger need on the inside than the outside, but the prospects are so much better on the outside. I'm still leaning towards taking tackle anyways, as Orlando Brown had a down year and Jonah Williams is likely departing in free agency. Oregon State's Talisa Fuaga gets to keep repping the orange and black as he goes to Cincy at 18. Moving on to the LA Rams, they sadly lost defensive coordinator Raheem Morris to the Falcons, and it's a question if anyone else can retain at least average defensive success with that roster. So this draft should be all about adding starting talents all around, and I think that starts with the edge. Match up potential Defensive Rookie of the Year Byron Young and take the falling Laiatu Latu out of UCLA. Pittsburgh rounds out the top 20 and they bring in huge questions for their future at quarterback. If I'm Pittsburgh, I'm holding off on drafting one and just bringing in an experienced vet like Jacoby Brissett to compete with Pickett. With that being said, address the need at defensive back that surprisingly shot up this season. Kalen King would be great, just not this high in the draft. Don't overthink it too much and snag Alabama corner Terrion Arnold here. Miami is in a situation where they either trade down or they reach. I'm taking the reach part of it since they don't have much to lose and at least one team does it every year. So they enter with minimal needs at almost every position except for linebacker, which is why I say it's a reach. Nobody really saw Jack Campbell going as high as he did, and I think the Dolphins could fill in that role this season. Grab a new middle guy and get Texas A&M's Edgerrin Cooper at pick 21. So now that Jacksonville is back at pick 22, I'll explain why they traded down. I think their biggest need is adding an interior run defender, especially after their late season collapse in 2023. There's none to love at pick 17, especially right after Taylor went off the board. But even then, he's more of a pass rushing threat than anything on the inside. So they trade down and make it more reasonable to select Texas defensive tackle Byron Murphy II with pick 22. 10 picks left to go in the first round. We make our way to Houston, who has a decision to make. I think their number one option is to keep surrounding Stroud with threats, but should that be at receiver or on the O-line? If you go receiver, you're taking the Seahawks route, and that's actually exactly where I'm going here. Nico Collins on the outside, Tank Dell is a probable slot guy, and LSU wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. taking whichever available slot there is. Now we get even more interesting. Dallas doesn't have a lot to lose here, and if everything doesn't go well with Mike McCarthy, I think you leave the next head coach with a lot of picks and a lot of rebuilding talent. So with that being said, my fifth and final mock trade comes in here. Dallas trades pick 24 to Kansas City and doesn't get pick 29, but instead receives pick 64, their 2025 second rounder, and a 2025 fourth rounder. The Chiefs have bigger needs with starting talents, and especially after this down year, a lot of their true colors shined. Without Eric Bieniemy, this offense did not look pretty at some points. That starts with getting Mahomes a great deep threat, and while he may be inefficient, I think Florida State's Keon Coleman is the 24th overall pick in this situation. Green Bay comes up at pick 25 after their surprisingly great season. When you look at their season and what went well and what didn't, you come down to the worst thing being the O-line. Inside and out, there were some holes, but the better opportunity for the future comes outside. Bakhtiari is 32, Zach Tom wasn't great this season, and you have a great shot to draft Georgia offensive tackle Amarius Mims here at 25, the fifth tackle off the board. Another shocking end to the season comes with Tampa Bay at pick 26. They surprisingly don't have a bunch of needs, but with rumors sparking about Mayfield possibly departing, they might need quarterback. While that's a possibility, I don't think he departs, and the Bucs go elsewhere in this draft. I think here you take the inside-outside versatile Jared Verse out of Florida State and decide where you want him after he arrives. Arizona comes through with their second selection via Houston. They traded down in the first place because Marvin Harrison Jr. went before their pick, and since the top three wideouts left by 8th overall, they hold off on taking one until 27. Two more receivers went before this pick in Thomas Jr. and Coleman, but I think the extremely fluid Troy Franklin is a great choice here. 5 picks remaining, beginning with Buffalo at pick 28. They have an interesting spot here, even if we narrow it down to the selection being in the secondary. You got age starting to interrupt at the safety position, and a downhill direction beginning in the cornerback position. Honestly, I think they go corner even with Tre'Davious White and Rasul Douglas on the outside. If you're a big fan of my stuff, you know I don't even like Tre'Davious White that much, so they go with Toledo's Quinyon Mitchell at this pick. Here comes Detroit. Their season has come to an end, and now they probably have their most secure offseason ever. That's until Ben Johnson goes elsewhere. Anyways, I think they zone in on defense here and go with a position that has been full of fallers. The next best edge lined up across from Dallas Turner at Alabama, as Chris Braswell is the 29th overall pick. Moving on to pick 30. The Baltimore Ravens don't have a lot of needs whatsoever, and their biggest need at cornerback is even a question. I do think they have very nice depth at the position, but spending heavy capital on a starting corner would be great. With that being said, I think that corner is Mizzou's Ernest Rakestraw Jr. Minnesota fans, you've waited long enough. That pick that San Fran gave you is finally here, and you're going to use it on a controversial pick. Who would have thought? I'm starting to grow more and more of a belief that Minnesota will lean towards selecting quarterback. And with a couple of guys on the board still that might be worth your time, the Kirk Cousins era will probably be over. Oregon signal caller Bo Nix is my selection here. And finally, to end this mock draft, the Kansas City Chiefs are up with their second selection of the first round, as I believe they will win the Super Bowl. And they need to continue their offensive heist here. In the 2023 offseason, the Chiefs signed Jawan Taylor to a massive contract. As soon as they did it, I knew it was a big overpay, and I think that comes into the spotlight a little more now. So it's time to mock my 6th offensive tackle of this video, as Washington's Troy Fautanu is the pick here. Who did I miss in this mock? Who do you like the most in this draft? Let me know in the comments section below. Wait, are you not subscribed yet? Well, do it now. I release content like this all the time and would really appreciate your support. I'm Chase Keller from Chase Keller Journalism, and I will see you all next time.